Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Catching Up with Web Performance, a podcast about stories of people in web performance. Today, my special guest is Ethan Gardner. Ethan, man, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. It's great to see you.
Yeah, you too. It's good to finally talk to you. I've been following you on the interwebs for a while. So.
Oh, no.
Yeah, dude.
It's always weird when you find out that people actually read stuff you put into the void.
I mean, why not? You got to learn from somebody, right? Might as well be you.
Well, shucks, flattered. But yeah, man, here it's all about stories. I want to learn about you. We're going to talk. We're going to hang out. I want to hear, how did you get into this world of web performance? Like, what's your story? I don't know if there's a memory that kicks it off for you, but Ethan, how did you get into web performance?
Well, way back when, Steve Soutter's book, High Performance Websites, I've been a web developer for 17 years now. That's the one. So that was probably like, I saw a press release about that. I'm like, wait, what is this? Because I knew how to build a website. Like I knew how to write code. I knew how to make a functioning thing. But the fact of performance, is the typical case of, hey, I'm a developer. I'm working on an office network. I have a decently spec'd machine. Things seem fast. So just looking at like kind of a larger picture, that was kind of the first foray into web performance for me. And then, you saw different tools come out like YSlow from Yahoo. That came out. It was a Firebug extension prior to the days where browsers had like built-in dev tools that were actually written by their dev team. It was
you're telling me I couldn't just open and hit record and like go what?
Yeah, things are pretty easy now, but it was different back in those days. And then web page test. Back when it was like sponsored and written by the folks at AOL.
Yeah.
I saw that. I was like,
shout out Pat Meenan.
Yeah, right. I didn't know how to read a waterfall chart, but I was like, oh, these colors are kind of cool. Like I can kind of like pretend like I know what's going on here. So anyways, like I had started an interest in it back then, just learning more and more. And I guess really the catalyst for me doing it a lot is that I've worked in publishing for most of my career. I've had various different stints in advertising agencies, publishing, and conferences and live events. But a lot of it's in publishing, and that can very much impact your bottom line with web performance.
Yeah,
so,
like how so?
Traffic is kind of live or die for places that are the company I work for now is ad supported as well as subscriber supported. Mm-hmm. So we are not the only voice in the space, but if you look at performance as kind of a competitive advantage, it makes sense, right? Because nobody likes using slow products. We want people to subscribe to our products. We want people to stick around for multiple years once they subscribe and not just, kind of go like, here's my credit card number, like a gym membership for a lot of people.
Right.
So yeah, that was really the catalyst. And then when COVID hit and I had all kinds of free time on my hands, I really tried to level up my skills. So I started just hitting the books, taking online courses and things like that to try and bolster that. And it kind of corresponds with the timeline for when Core Web Vitals came out, but it goes beyond that for me.
So let's see if I've got this right. We back up. You've been doing this 17 plus years.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So spanning over a decade, way back when the great prophet Steve Souters announced high performance websites, you saw this book press release like, oh, that's interesting. Shortly thereafter, web page test comes on the scene. You're like, whoa, waterfalls. What is this? This is cool. And then doing stuff, jumping between advertising, publishing, and conferences. And then all of a sudden, it's like, am I doing the math right? Is this like 13? At least a decade later, COVID hits, Core Web Vitals hit, you have free time. I want to get better. It's almost like web performance came in real early here, went along doing my job, and then all of a sudden it rears its head again. And you're like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to learn everything I can about this. Is that kind of the timeline?
Yep. And I mean, in my day-to-day responsibility, like performance isn't all I do, but it's a big part of it. I'm still writing UIs, I'm writing serverless functions, I'm writing edge workers and CI CD stuff. I'm all over the place, but
Yeah. I feel like that's probably the story for a lot, if not most people, right? Like I haven't done the big developer survey, but I feel like there's, I don't know, middle class develop, like there's a whole bunch of us who are not doing the glorious React apps. And then on the flip side, there's not, I don't know, there's the long tail of websites that people just spin up for themselves, but they don't really do it full time.
Yep.
And then there's all of us doing like I work on a bunch of WordPress websites, right?
Me too.
Right. So like here we are. Tell me a bit more, like, I guess that day to day you're describing, what's that like and how does performance fit in? Like when do you get to do this?
So that was kind of an interesting conversation I had with like my boss, my CEO, my CTO, and all that stuff, because I knew that performance made sense to improve. Like the core of our sites was written several years ago. And you know how things go in business, like you bolt things on. The people that had previously commissioned something might not be at the company. There's turnover. There's all kinds of different changing situations. So I was like, hey, we can't just keep like adding things on here. So I ran a performance, I guess, previously to me really making a case for it had been, let's do this when you had time. Well, guess what? I work on like a very small engineering team and I never had time. Like
how small are we talking? 2 people?
So
3 people?
We'll say 3. So
One
it's
person?
basically, no, it's more than one. We have 3 people who work on the core web products. We have some other people who do like email development, data science, things like that. We have a product developer who's really, really good. And my boss is actually like the vice president of product development. But prior to that, she was like the head of project management. Mm-hmm. So real small team. You basically got 3 people who are doing, we have 5 big sites that are our main subscriber base, and then some other ones like an online store, some ones that promote like workshops and online classes and things like that. So my day-to-day primarily is front end, but it's also edge workers. We use some functions at the edge to improve our cache hit rate, to proxy third-party services and reduce that latency hit that you kind of experience when you use third parties, geolocation for GDPR compliance. And like I wrote the geolocation stuff on top of Cloudflare and then logged it. I wrote the GDPR library, the cookie consent. It's not like one of the third party ones. It logs to an Amazon SimpleDB and it has logs, like all kinds of stuff is involved. So basically any moving part, I guess primarily my main course of the day is front end in terms of like where I fall among the skill set of the different people on the team. Mm-hmm. But I do stuff with our deployment system.
Right. It's you 3 working on everything.
Yes, it's the 3 of us working on everything. It's a lot. It's chaos.
We are the front line. This is it. Oh man, I'm so curious about this because again, I feel like this is the story for so many of us. And like, how do you make this time? How do you find and learn about performance? Like you mentioned, it sounds like you've got kind of 2 sides of the spectrum here. On the one hand, and maybe we can say pre-core Web Vitals, it was the learning performance and air quotes doing performance was, I have to do it on my own. It's a passion project. It's something I just want to do. And then there's the other side of the spectrum where it's like, no, this is actually, there's a business case for this now. And I need to learn on the job. And maybe we don't have to attach it to business case, but like on the one side, you have learning as a passion project. And on the other side, you have learning on the job. Tell me a bit more about your learning here, like where you fit performance education in general.
So I have a master's degree in education. And I guess kind of the way that I've always managed my career and my continuing learning is that the IEEE and ACM, which are 2 professional organizations, have a practice guideline called SWEBOK, which stands for Software Engineering Body of Knowledge. And it's published roughly every 10 years. They're on version 3, but it is full scope of practice in terms of kind of all the skills that a software engineer needs to know. Everything from your soft skills, teamwork, collaboration, and gets into other things like risk management, project planning, full scope. So what I did was looked at SWEBOC and then kind of filled in the gaps. I was like, okay, I'm deficient in this area, this area, this area. Let's formulate a learning plan around that.
I've got to pause you for a second because you've blown my mind on like 3 levels here. Like, first off, master's in education. What?
Yeah.
And then all these acronyms, like, what are, I don't know how many people know what the IEEE, ACM, and SWEBOC are. So back up, or like repeat for me here. Let's start with this. You have a master's in education.
Yep.
What?
Yeah. At one point in time, I thought I wanted to teach college at the college level. So that's where the master's of education came in. I got that degree 10 years after I got my undergrad degree. And I have taught college classes before. I've adjuncted. But, once I kind of got a taste of that and then got a taste of the web performance stuff, I just continued to stay in the industry as opposed to going to the education side. But teaching's a bit of like the family profession. My wife is a professor of nursing. I have an aunt who's a professor of psychology down in Miami. My mom was an elementary school teacher prior to me being born and then never went back to it. But
still, I mean, so teaching's in your blood here.
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh, okay. We're going to have a great time then, because like that's kind of my shtick on the side here. Like, I love teaching. I want to teach. I want to learn, and then see where we can spread this. But so we've got master's in education. Somehow you became an engineer. I'm gonna come back to that in a bit, but hit me with these acronyms again, because the IEEE, ACM, SWEBOC. How did you find these? Like, what even are these things, and how did you find them?
Well, the IEEE and ACM are 2 separate professional organizations. I personally have been a member of the ACM for, I don't know, probably a decade now.
Wow.
But they're great professional resources. Both of them have libraries full of learning materials, and it's anything from, your basic industry news to stuff that's like super duper low level, close to the metal engineering and artificial intelligence, machine learning, all that stuff. So it's a great resource. The ACM I can speak a little more of because that's the one I have a membership to. But they do webinars from time to time. That's how I got interested in a lot of different things and have read some kind of instrumental things to my career.
Like what kind of things?
One thing in particular was when I was working at the agencies, my estimates were terrible. They were so bad. So I was like, look, man, like you can't keep going over or way under. Like, let's work on getting a little more accuracy in these things. So there was a presenter named Steve McConnell who wrote a book called Software Estimation, Demystifying the Black Art. And it goes into a formula of how to make an estimate. So basically, the key takeaway was doing weighted averages of best case, most likely case, and worst case. And then you essentially do 3 estimates. But when I did that, my estimates were super close to what it actually ended up being, instead of me going, I don't know.
You coming up with a best, middle, and worst case, and then kind of averaging them together somehow came up with a much better estimate.
Yeah, they're weighted differently.
Yeah.
So it's not like an even weight, but
it's not like a pure average.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Weighted average. And it helped a lot. So there's been some other stuff kind of similar to that, but it's a great resource. My deep secret, which I'll share with you, is like the library is actually a really good place to learn stuff.
Wait, so, just any library in the world, or like the ACM library?
So the ACM library has a great collection of resources, but also for a while there, they were partnering with Safari Books Online and Skillsoft. Now they're not partnering with Safari or O'Reilly, if you will, but they still have the other one. And I get the O'Reilly subscription through my public library. So yes, the shout out to Cincinnati, Hamilton County Public Library. And it might be through, if people still have access through the college that they went to or their local library. Literally tens of thousands of books and videos are And the thing I like about that is they're actually sequenced.
Mm.
It's not just like a bunch of like tutorials of like, oh, I'm going to learn, you mentioned like the React apps. Like I've actually built a few React apps, but
Yeah.
the way I did it was I got on, O'Reilly through the library and like took a course, like step by step, and like, boom, by the end of the day, like I got working apps. So
You
that
didn't
was
jump
it.
in and like haphazardly try it yourself, trial and error. Like it was, no, hey, this is an organized course, like what you need to learn, bump, 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 and get. I'm curious, did it hit like on any fundamentals or jump around, or is it pretty focused on this is how you build the application?
It was pretty much like, this is how you build the application. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, something that is like, your crawl, walk, run sequence that's already done for you is so much better than like, oh, geez, like when do I use like use state, or like what is a reducer or something like that? Like what's a ref in React? And you're just kind of like piecing it together. This
Right.
actually went through comprehensively in an order that at least made sense to me. So
Yeah.
that was kind of how I went about it.
Yeah. And I like you bringing up the crawl, walk, run, because I don't know about most people. I feel like me, I tend to try to run immediately as soon as there's a new topic. Like I'm going to go on the
Yeah.
deep end and I'm just going to try. Yeah, Redux, right?
Yeah.
but then now if you step back and just give yourself a little, I don't know, give yourself a little grace. Hey, it's okay to crawl. Like you can follow this step by step tutorial. It's okay. You don't have to be brilliant and a genius out the gate.
Right. Right.
So we've got masters in education.
Yep.
We've got all these professional bodies that I'm still like, what? These are even a thing? How long have these been here? And like, you get it. I got into web development, had no idea. And Sweebach, you're telling me there's a whole organized body of knowledge that I didn't know existed? I'm really curious about are we pronouncing it right? Sweebach?
That's how I say it. I don't know if that's the official sanction, but
If anybody knows, yeah, tell us. I'm curious about that. Like, are there any highlights or things that you've learned from that you've taken away? Like, this was really useful.
just as far as like sequencing the knowledge was helpful. And there was a bit in there that was, I tweeted it out the other day. It was something like you can either code for reuse or code with reuse.
Tell me more.
So like if you code things that are meant to be reusable, you can use them in other areas. And if you think before you actually start coding, I think a lot of people make the mistake of probably coding too early before they understand the problems or think in terms of abstractions. That was pretty key nugget of wisdom I thought was in there that I can like just recall off, the top of my head. But
yeah,
I think the soft skills were kind of like instrumental as well. That's actually what my master's project was on when I was getting my master's degree was, teamwork, collaboration, communication. It's an area that a lot of companies cited that people were deficient in. So it's something that, you always see these junior engineers on Twitter or aspiring engineers like, God, how do I get my first blah, 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 blah. I'd say emphasize soft skills. Like if you can go in and you can talk to people and you can be like, hey, you can put me in front of a client, you can put me in front of a stakeholder. Cause like the skills are kind of homogenous, right? Like everybody knows HTML, everybody knows JavaScript, CSS to varying degrees. Right. But like, I think a lot of what really makes a senior person is, their personality traits on top of their knowledge. It's just not some like, brainiac dude sitting down, just banging out code. Right. I mean, it probably is somewhere, but in my experience anyways, the soft skills matter.
I'm curious, can you tell me more about these soft skills? And then, because I feel like I've read an article of yours on your blog where you talked a bit about how you've used soft skills and how those have played into even, and we can talk about in general or performance specifically, but what are more of these soft skills and how have you seen them play out for you?
One thing that I guess you'd just consider them, personal skills or even personality traits. But at my current company, I mentioned that I was kind of having, difficulty getting people to pay attention to performance. Certainly being at a publisher or a media company, having Core Web Vitals come out from Google, having like that official like stamp of approval from Big G of like, hey, this will impact your SEO helped.
Right.
But problem solving is a huge thing. That's a key soft skill. So I was like, okay, we have a problem with performance, but we also have a problem with getting people to kind of acknowledge that we have a problem with performance. So how can I demonstrate that? And that was really a soft skill in action. I was like, okay, nobody likes to say our competitors are better than us at X or whatever it is. So what I actually ended up doing to get the sign off on the performance work was to run a competitive analysis using Lighthouse CLI, just because it was like easy to automate. I could store it in the database. I could, refer to it periodically. I could take the median. I could do all kinds of different manipulation with the data it gives you. And I was able to show that, were we the best? Like sometimes. Were we the worst? Sometimes. In terms of site performance, I should mention asterisk in case anybody is listening.
We have great content. We do our job.
Yeah.
But site speed, sometimes it goes up and it goes down.
Right. And then also like the teaching and the mentoring thing with my master's education. So I have managerial experience at a prior company. And essentially what I did with them being the people that reported to me and the people on my team, was I created or help them to create an individual education plan for themselves and their own professional development. So it was something that was what they wanted to work on, but I helped them fit it into the context of what we were doing as a company. So it was actually like they were growing during working hours, and I would look for opportunities based on that for them so they would be able to actually put skills into practice.
Do you have any examples, or is there a particular learning plan you can think of and remember? Like, what were some of the items that were on that list, or ways that you saw this person grow?
So like one person went from being pretty junior, just HTML, CSS, not much JavaScript, maybe some jQuery back in the time, but nothing super intense. But by the time that their tenure with me was over, they were writing like MongoDB queries and doing some PHP stuff. I have another person who worked for me that ended up, just doing like front end stuff. And now he's the head of like his own UX team for a pretty major retailer in the fitness space. So,
fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess education works. Who knew, right?
I'm curious, in your learning experience, like, you've learned so many things. You've covered so many different sides of the development world. What are some things that have maybe surprised you, or have there things that you were particularly interested or get confused by, find difficult? Like, what are some of those nuggets that you found in your experience?
So with regard to the performance work, just, it's one thing to make a site fast, but to keep it fast is a whole different issue, right? Like somebody coming in and adding a third-party package can undo a lot of work really quickly. So just trying to educate people that I work with, and like, it's not a perfect process, but I'm making strides. If we're going to introduce a new third party, like, let's test it in isolation. Let's see how many resources it brings in. Let's see how many domains it brings it in from. What latency penalty are we paying? How much does it block the main thread and all that stuff? So that's been pretty important in terms of trying to keep things fast once we get there. That's, I guess, a key performance learning is you got to kind of elevate the efforts of others, because you can't be the performance cop or performance janitor for the, entire code base.
And how do you do that? How do you not be the guy telling everybody what to do?
I mean, sometimes I am, but the rapport with the coworkers is pretty good. I think really the personalities of the people I work with, that helps as well. Like if you're on like a big ego type of team and you're like telling people like, look, you might want to get this third party domain out of the head and like maybe, do it later in the process. Because I think a lot of people make the mistake, and this is, the marketing companies, the analytics companies have it set up to, in their documentation, for things to work in as many places as possible. So just because the snippet that they give you is the snippet that they give you, that doesn't mean it's necessarily the best way to load that snippet.
So then you take that snippet and you make it better.
I try to.
How much do you feel like this is an education problem versus like, I don't know, a tooling or platform problem? Like when you talk about elevating people, is that elevating them through knowledge, through better feedback systems? Like what does that look like? What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is elevating people through knowledge for the most part because a lot of people will test on an office network or they'll test on their flagship phone or they'll test on a high spec machine. And not everybody experiences a site that way. I've worked from home for 5 years, even prior to COVID. And like I increased the speed of my internet connection during COVID. So like
Yeah.
I have a pretty fast internet connection. It's well above the median for, what people have in their houses. And it's really like, okay, a lot of our publications, they're for people who are either professionals or hobbyists. But sometimes one of the situations they use this in, like even a good phone or good device can misbehave sometimes. But like you might have a contractor who's out on a job site. Maybe it's 5G, maybe it's not. You might have somebody who is, at a one of the properties I work on is for people who make and sew their own clothing. So there is an engineer at Kroger, the grocery store chain, who was talking about, they test all their phones or all their sites and applications on like the worst phone that they sell in their store, which is like pretty terrible. But one of the things that I thought was interesting was the stores are so large, it makes a Faraday cage, which causes like electromagnetic interference and it like degrades everybody's signal, even though like they might be in a high population area that might otherwise be good.
Making the world's fastest website and other mistakes. Yeah, that series was the best. I loved every minute of it. Now, Taylor Hunt.
I should know his name. We're like from the same city, but.
Oh, really? Taylor, where you at? We got to meet you, man. So you have a site that's used in these situations that like, it's not always great. And so performance is much more important to your bottom line.
Yep. Might not always be great. I mean, some of the stuff like the evergreen content, like there's an article on the site about how to set like thread tension on a sewing machine. We get tons of traffic from countries that, probably aren't our core subscriber base, but there's like a ton of traffic from like Singapore and Australia and stuff like that. It's like,
because
really?
It's useful knowledge for them.
Yeah. And it's like everybody who's into that needs to know how to do it. So
that's fantastic. It reminds me, I was helping out with one of our teams at my job. It was HughesNet. And they had done a redesign and then noticed, oh, snap, we're like failing core web vitals. What's going on? And long story short, realized, oh, that's right. We sell internet. We sell satellite internet to rural communities. Like we sell internet to the people who can't get internet otherwise.
Right.
No wonder all of our performance metrics are so bad. Like time to first byte is upwards of 2 seconds, right?
Yeah.
I love those kind of surprises. Have you had any other surprises, I guess, or things that like, oh, I didn't see that coming when you're working on a site?
Yeah, like it's been a lot of like trial and error and making mistakes. So I think if you use the tools that are out there and do the things that they tell you to do, you'll actually end up with a pretty good product. But once native lazy loading came out, I was like way too eager. I'm like, let's lazy load everything. Yeah. And like, of course, that's not a good idea for like your LCP image or what have you. So
how'd you find out like in that moment?
I think the way I found out was somebody told me it wasn't a good idea. I think I was watching like a web page test stream or something like that. And they're like, don't lazy load your LCP. I'm like,
I can see like Tim or Scott or somebody right now, big bug eyes. Don't lazy load your LCP.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was Harry Roberts was talking about, how he was like working with like the Lighthouse team to like get that as like a thing, like put that as like a warning, like don't do it.
That's great. So you lazy load comes out, you find out about it. You're like, this is amazing. I can do native lazy loading in like one little attribute. Bam, I'm done.
Yep.
Get a little overzealous, put lazy loading everywhere, including above the fold content. Then as you're educating yourself, as you're watching a stream with Harry Roberts on web page test, Harry says, yo, you may want to, does Harry say yo? I would love to hear Harry say yo. But, but Harry says, hey, make sure you don't lazy load your LCP image because that can delay it even longer.
Right.
And you go, oh, snap. You have this revelation and you double back and go back and fix all your sites.
Yeah. I mean, kind of the beauty of being on a small engineering team is like, I won't say I have carte blanche to do whatever I want, but like, I don't have to like wait for like a sprint to fix something, or I don't have to be like, hey, I think we should do this. Like, nah, just like open my IDE and like I hammer stuff out. So like the pace that I'm making some of these changes is really quick. And there's been some great wins with like low hanging fruit that way because it doesn't have to go through all that stuff. So,
yeah. Well, here, maybe in closing, do you have any, if you could go back 17 years ago to young Ethan, what would you tell yourself? What advice would you give yourself in your career?
I would say definitely keep learning, but also market yourself. So like I've been terrible about that.
Yeah.
Like I've done some cool things. Like I've been the IT director for a conference that was in Cape Town, South Africa. I've worked for, some global brands and publishing companies. And
Ethan, you know what this means?
What's that?
You're going to have to come on again and tell us all these stories.
All right. Fair enough. But like, I've done some really cool things, but like, here I am 17 years into my career. And like, it's like if a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? Like, and I'm talking even within my company on Twitter. Sometimes I scream my performance wins into the void that is Twitter.
Yeah.
As I said in one of my posts to my tens of followers.
Hey, you got one more now though.
Yeah, buddy. Worth it. So just, doing stuff like that. Let people know, kind of build in public. What are you working on? What are you doing? Can you connect with somebody else that's kind of doing the same thing and maybe has solved that problem? Like you'd be surprised how quickly and how responsive people in the performance space are. Like, before I really started getting into performance, I never thought I'd be talking to people who like you're writing specs or browser engineers or work at like Google or whatever. It was like, the people I talk to or people I work with at the bar over a beer at happy hour, like, which is cool too. Right. Like you got to connect with your coworkers and like build that team stuff. But especially when you work at a place for a long time and like the team I work on at 5 years, I'm the newest employee that works on the web stuff. Like it, yeah.
I feel like that's unheard of in tech.
Yeah. There's there's people that have left the team, but we haven't filled the positions, which is unfortunate. But it's been, I guess, like when you have kind of the same old, if you're not getting out there in the industry and you're not talking to other people, you're not really learning about other ideas. So like, if you consider even where things were 5 years ago, when I came in, I was like, oh, we got all this stuff we can do. Yeah. And like now, like what was new 5 years ago is like, well, we've already implemented that. Like, where do I get my ideas from now? Yeah. So it's from talking to people and stuff like that.
I think that is a fantastic way to wrap it up here. I mean, like for everybody else out there, like, by the way, that's like how we met, right? Like we started chatting on Twitter, right? Like I posted this thing and said, I want to do a podcast. And the performance community is so amazing that so many people just jumped in and said, yeah, let's talk. I want to hang out, right? Get out there, like get on Twitter, get into the Slack community. Like we have such a great community with web performance. People are so ready to talk. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, at Ethan Gardner on Twitter.
There it is. Yeah, man. How do people follow you? How are they going to find you?
Yeah. So EthanGardner.com. Ethan Gardner on Twitter. And then I'm also doing some mentoring on Mentor Cruise where I help people, either get started in a career or grow to the next level in their practice.
Ethan, it has been absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on the show. We're going to do another one of these.
All right, man. Sounds good.
Sweet.
Good talking to you.
Bye.
All right. Bye.